Hi, this is Paul Palmer. Today I'm going to talk to you about quality management. There are multiple different approaches to the management of quality of products or service. But my favorite is the one where you look at customer-supplier relationships. You look at where you start, what steps come next, and next, and next, and next, and making sure throughout the process that each customer gets delivered what they need by the supplier in a consistent manner, you end up with a good quality product at the end of it. But how do you manage those relationships? Well, of course you need commitment from the top, because they have to actually want you to manage those relationships. And you have your systems defined, because if your process is flexible, then the likelihood is that the customer's not consistently going to get the right delivery from the supplier. So I'll give you an example. I worked with a client a while ago who hadn't actually documented their process. It's only a small team, and they found when they actually documented the process that the one of the sales teams, not that, and it wasn't a manager, it was a sales, I think they called it a sales exec, didn't actually know that she didn't need approval from the MD to be able to go and make a sale. And when they documented everything throughout the whole process, the sales went up because she realized she could actually go ahead and make sales. But a better example for me was one where I worked with a company who had failed to get their registration, their manufacturing authorization, MIA as it were. And they'd already failed twice. But they didn't actually tell me before I took on the contract that they'd failed twice already. But it came up during the discussions, of course. And what it came down to was they weren't managing the quality. They were just working towards passing the test. They weren't looking at how the product would be manufactured in a consistent manner. They were just looking at the SOPs to put in place to meet the standard. And I do find that's quite a common problem, unfortunately. You can put all the SOPs in place that you need to meet the ISO standard, but if you haven't actually applied those to the business, well, you're not really managing quality. You're just managing your standard, your ISO standard, working to the rules that somebody else set, not those that actually apply to your business. Now, when I think about quality control and quality assurance, I think of quality control not as a department, but as the checks and balances that you put in place to make sure everything you did before worked. And then, of course, you've got quality assurance. Well, for me, that's all the things that you do up front to make sure that you can manage the quality or implement quality management throughout your systems and processes, throughout your whole business, to ensure, or should I say assure, that at the end of the production run, at the end when you want to ship it, before you want to release it, when you do your quality control checks, they're all going to pass. So what is the best approach to quality management? Well, for me, it's making sure you've got the team, making sure the team that you have there are actually interested and willing to implement quality management principles throughout your business. Because the principles are not the same as saying the words. The principles are making sure that you do things right and you do the right thing. Making sure that you understand your customer expectations, not giving them what you've got. Making sure that when something goes wrong, you put it right. But not only that, you look at why it went wrong and put in place a system and process to fix it. Now, that's commonly known as CAPA, corrective action, preventive action. But having a procedure in place that says CAPA doesn't mean you're managing your quality. What it means is you're following a procedure that says CAPA. What you really have to do is make sure that quality management is ubiquitous throughout the whole of your team. So what do I mean by that? Well, you have to make sure that the people on the shop floor are trained. But how do you achieve a satisfactory level of training, a high level of training? Well, other people within the team also need to be trained. So the supervisors have to be trained. The managers have to be trained. The execs have to be trained. But they have to be trained in a consistent manner. They all need to understand the basic principles. And then they need to understand, well, what's the impact of you behaving in that way? For example, you look at KPIs. So my KPI is I've got to get £1 million of stock through the door every week. Okay. So that's 4 million some months and 5 million another month. Or maybe it's 4.5 because it finishes halfway through the month. But you've got to get 4 million every week, $1 million every week. Well, that's okay if you set your KPI at $1 million every week, but it's quite rare that it's set at $1 million every week. It's more common that it's set at the monthly basis. And at the end of the month, you're counting your beans, as it were, or your pounds or your dollars. And you think, right, so what's my KPI? Well, it's 5 million a month, of course, because we've got to take into account the long months. But what does that really mean? So that's the impact of that. Saying that you're aiming for 1 million a week, and maybe you're budgeting for 1 million a week, but actually 1 month in every 3, you really need to do 5 million. But then if you're setting your target at that month's level, you need to do 5 million every month. Well, how do you achieve that? How do you maintain quality when you're stretching your standards in a way that's inconsistent? It's very hard. It's very hard when your systems are not set up to achieve the goal. And that means you get pressure from the management team. That means you get pressure from the execs saying, well, why haven't you met the goal? Well, because blah, 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 they don't want to know. So you make sure when you discuss KPIs that you discuss them throughout the team, not just within the department, but throughout the whole team, the company, all those that are working towards those goals. And then you develop a dashboard so you can see how well you're doing. And then when you've got an area to focus on where you're having problems, you know from your statistics, from your KPIs, from your quality management methodology, which area it is that you're struggling with. You do your Pareto analysis and go for the top one first. When you fix the top one, well, maybe you need to go for number 2 as well. So that's it for today. It's Paul Palmer talking about quality management.